In accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, PL 1975, Chapter 231, adequate notice of this regular meeting of the Planning Board of the Township of Franklin has been provided. Just a note, and I think you've been here before, sign in, speak directly into the microphones. I think that's pretty much it. All right. Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we get started, Carl Hauk, Mustafa Manzray, and Sammy Shaban all asked to be excused this evening. Oh, and Councilman Amarson, too, for all various reasons. Mahir Rafiq?
She is here. She had to step out a moment.
Got it. Ted Chase? Here. Jennifer Ragnow? Here. Charles Brown?
Here.
Robert Thomas?
Here.
Chairman Orsini?
Here. So we have a number of minutes. The first regular meeting from September 7th, 2022.
I would move the minutes.
I will second.
Mahir, I'll go back to her. Ted Chase?
Yes.
Charles Brown?
Yes.
Robert Thomas?
Yes.
Chairman Orsini?
Yes. Mahir?
Mahir Rafiq? Here.
And
And we're voting on the minutes right now from
just for the
9/7.
first.
Just voted to send your photo.
So you're here, and then we're voting on the minutes for 9/7. So I called your name, Mahir Rafiq?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, and then we have the minutes from September 21st.
Move the motion.
I'll second.
Mahir Rafiq?
Yes.
Ed Chase?
Yes.
Jennifer Ragnow?
Yes.
Robert Thomas?
Yes.
Chairman Orsini?
Yes. And lastly, we have the minutes from October 12th, which you will have received from
Move that
Kristen by email.
resolution also.
I could bring up some corrections.
Yeah.
Ted, you want to just email me them?
Well, the first thing which got me started might be substantial. The minutes say regular meeting. Wasn't it a special meeting?
No, I answered your email and explained to you that there was a holiday, so that October 12th was on the beginning of the year. It was the November minutes that we ended up having a special meeting, not October 12th.
Okay. The other things, well, perhaps the most substantial is Mr. Wisniewski, line 5 on his first page, it has the word "let," which doesn't make sense. It should be "which led to filing," line 7, just prior to that scheduled meeting, the governing body.
So line 5 and line 7 is LED, LED, you want something changed
It
to?
should be "which led."
Which LED, okay, and line 7 is
Led to
what?
filing zoning board application. 7, the way it's written, it just says, but just prior the governing body, so it should be just prior to that scheduled meeting. The others I'll just give you, naming some of the public who spoke.
Okay,
Okay,
so when you
so-
send the
so-
email to me, I'll correct the minutes from Kathy, and then I'll submit them I'll make sure they're correct, but they get posted to the website, okay?
Yeah. So pending those corrections, we'll,
that's them?
did we have a motion? Yeah? Yeah, we
Mr.
did.
Thomas gave the first motion.
Okay, I seconded, I think.
You seconded it? Okay. Mahir Rafiq?
Yes.
Ed Chase?
Yes.
Charles Brown?
Yes.
Robert Thomas?
Yes.
Chairman Orsini?
Yes. Okay, resolutions. I have a couple of those. So the first one is 50 Atrium Drive LLC. I'll go ahead and move that.
Second.
Mahir Rafiq?
Yes.
Ed Chase?
Yes.
Jennifer Ragnow?
Yes.
Charles Brown?
Yes.
Robert Thomas?
Yes.
Chairman Orsini?
Yes. And the second one is Aisha Abraham, PLN 17-00001.
Move that resolution also.
Seconded.
Mahir Rafiq?
Yes.
Ted Chase?
Yes.
Jennifer Ragnow?
Yes.
Charles Brown?
Yes.
Robert Thomas?
Yes.
And Chairman Orsini?
Yes. So we have no discussion items, so we'll go right into open public comments. The purpose of this opening to the public is for any general planning comment that's not having its own public opening if it's a hearing. So if you want to talk about Awakening Dawn, then we'll wait for that application to be heard. So with that, I'll move to open to the public. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Meeting is open to the public for any general planning comments. Seeing no one coming forward, and move to close the public portion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so our only hearing tonight is Awakening Dawn, LLC, PLN 21-00015.
Working. Jim Stahl, S-T-A-H-L, the firm is Boris Golden Foley, Vignolo Hyman Stahl, and you all are accustomed to either seeing me or Mr. Peter Lanford. We have a minor subdivision tonight that Mr. Michael Ford will explain better than I can because of the various variances and the fact that there are two flag lots being created with your approval, and there is one existing home, so that the end result will be three lots for a minor subdivision. Christine or Mr. Clark, are my notices in order, and does the board have jurisdiction?
Yes.
I didn't mean to catch you off guard. Thank you very much. I have two witnesses if we need the third, but I don't usually put my client on, as you know, unless there are questions allocated to him. I have Mr. Michael Ford, who will testify as to the engineering components, and then I have Mr. Kevin O'Brien, who will testify as to the planning criteria. I'm going to leave this. I'm going to move on to Michael. You want to stand and raise your right hand, please?
solemnly swear to tell the truth.
Yes.
Name and address for.
Michael Ford, F-O-R-D, professional engineer with Van Cleef Engineering, 32 Brower Lane, Hillsborough, New Jersey.
Thank you. Mr. Clark, do I need to qualify him? I don't even know how many times he's been here.
Michael?
A lot.
Yeah.
Have your credentials changed in any way negatively since you were last accepted by this board?
No, sir.
And he's accepted.
Thank you very much, Mr. Orsini. All right, Michael, I'm just going to do my normal introduction, and you'll take it from there. You were the engineer at Van Cleef responsible for the preparation of the minor subdivision plans which submitted to the board. Is that correct?
Yes.
And I'm going to ask you, as I usually do, you'll do the existing conditions, and then you move on to what we're looking for and the breakdown. Before I do that, we have several exhibits, one of which is on the board. Mr. Clarkin and Mr. Chairman, there are some exhibits that are colorized and were not submitted to the board prior to today, or maybe they were. We don't think they were. We want to use them just for illustrative purposes.
Other than their coloration, are they exactly what was submitted with the application?
I think there's an aerial. Michael?
Yes. Yeah,
So the answer is yes, it was submitted with the package?
yeah, this exhibit that we have, we can refer to it as A1, or?
A1?
Okay.
Fine.
What's the title block? and
It's the proposed condition, it's entitled Proposed Condition Map, and it's the same as the preliminary and final minor subdivision plan that was submitted with also incorporating on the same color exhibit the proposed landscaping.
It's A1 into the record.
Okay.
If there are other exhibits, I'll have Mr. Ford identify them, and then we can make a decision as to those. All right, Michael, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, the subject of this evening's application is subdivision to create 3 lots, 2 building lots, and 1 lot with the existing house. Its property is 5 acres in the R40 zone, fronting on Cedar Grove Lane with public and sewer service available. During the planning and development stage of the project, we prepared sketches of alternative development scenarios for the property, one being essentially the one that we've submitted, and the second being a project which would basically substitute the driveway access with a public road and 2 lots. After discussion and consideration by staff and an appearance at the TRC meeting probably close to 2 years ago, we selected to pursue this application, which is, as Mr. Stahl indicated, 2 flag lots. So the 2 building lots with new houses at the rear of the property would have frontage on Cedar Grove Lane with flagpole access, and then I'm highlighting it now, the existing home would be on I'll say a more standard type of lot with frontage on Cedar Grove Lane. The proposed lots, and that is proposed lot 13.01 that I just highlighted with the existing dwelling, is in excess of 1 acre in size. The 2 new flag lots identified as 13.02 and 13.03 lots are both flag lots with frontage in excess of 30 feet and a lot area of 1.57 acres for lot 13.02, which is the middle lot, and then the rear lot 13.03 is 2.41 acres in size, so well in excess of the 40,000 square foot, so they comply in lot area. And I'll leave testimony regarding the bulk standard and relief associated with the application to Mr. O'Brien, our planner. From an engineering standpoint, rather than provide 2 separate driveways within the flag poles for the 2 new building lots, we have proposed to provide 1 single driveway that would be shared by both lots for access. That's in an effort to reduce impervious coverage and still facilitate safe and adequate access to both dwellings. And that's what I'm highlighting here, a paved driveway 12 feet wide. Next to that driveway is a stormwater management feature and the required landscaping buffer along the flagpole and our track boundary. As I stated, we do have access to public water and sewer. It's in Cedar Grove Lane. And with regards to tree disturbance and impacts, beyond the current disturbance for the existing dwelling, and I'm highlighting that now with the lawn around that dwelling, the remainder of the tract is wooded, so there would be existing woods to be disturbed, and that would carry with it a requirement for tree mitigation. We've provided a plan with regards to tree mitigation and some plantings on site, and those plantings required by the ordinance beyond what can fit within the site would be provided for in a contribution in lieu of. With regards to outside agencies, we have an application pending with the Somerset County Planning Board. We made a submittal in response to comments we received from the county in November, and that submittal is pending a response. With regards to other outside agencies, we do have a October 25th review memo report from the Delaware and Raritan Canal Commission, which effectively says that the stormwater management features that are proposed as part of the application comply with their standards, and just cite that they're withholding recommendation for final action and approval by the commission, subject to approval letter from the county and the township approval. And that's standard. And then with regards to other outside agencies, we have a Somerset Union Soil Conservation District approval dated June 22nd, 2021. Maybe perhaps I can go right into the review memorandums now, and as I stated already, with regards to the relief.
Microphone.
Christine didn't yell at me that time. I got it.
Actually working.
Is it, normally I ask you if it's time, but since there's only two witnesses, that being Michael and Mr. O'Brien, I would like to, let's get through the memorandum now, if it's okay with you.
Yeah, and the only thing is, if, I noticed a lot, like, for example, in Mark's report, that you've already addressed in the revised plan. So
Correct.
I would just single out anything that you can comply with. If you can comply with everything, you just say you comply.
Yeah, that's what it's going to do.
Yeah, actually, for the August 24th, 2022 memorandum, from an engineering standpoint, I don't think there's something for us to address, and I was going to leave all of the planning testimony to Mr. O'Brien. So that's my testimony regarding that memorandum. And then with regards to other outside agencies or other staff memorandums, we do have a review from traffic with no comment, health with no objection, Franklin Township Sewage Authority, obviously we need their approval for the proposed public sewer connections, and that would be something we would seek certainly as a condition of approval when the houses are to be constructed. We have a memorandum of dated April 19th, 2022 from the Sustainability Group, and there are 4 bullet points.
Well, it's actually, it's our environmental.
Okay, environmental, excuse me, regarding sustainability.
Yeah.
Right. I'm sorry, the Environmental Commission.
Coordinator, actually.
I'm sorry, yes, I see that. Those 4 bullet points, the last 3 have to do with landscaping and tree mitigation, and I would say that we would comply to the extent that we satisfy your board planner and engineer with regards to landscaping proposals.
So is it 88 trees?
Yes.
And so not what it says in the plan, which is 84?
Correct.
Okay, so 88, you're planning 45, and and the remainder, you do a contribution.
That's correct.
So you're saying there's simply not enough room in the site at the end of the day, once it's built out,
Correct.
to put those trees there?
Right.
Okay.
And then there was a recommendation regarding porous pavement. From a stormwater standpoint, we've proposed basically a basin next to the driveway, and the driveway would be made of standard pavement. That's actually consistent with recommendations from other staff members, so we considered it, but elected to address stormwater and water quality and other methods. And
Okay,
then,
I mean, I'm a little surprised at that, because with such a small driveway relatively, I mean, we've had entire parking lots,
porous pavement.
Yeah.
Right. I think that the concern from staff, and I would let them speak for themselves, and certainly we would consider it if the boards, would prefer that, is the mechanism of continual maintenance and upkeep of that porous pavement driveway.
But you can make the same argument for a basin, though.
That's correct. Right.
So you're just trading one for the other. And frankly, a basin is a basin. I don't know if you're going to have it like a rainwater, or there's going to be trees in it or something like that. But if it's just an empty space that's mowed, I'd much prefer pervious pavement, because I don't think you need a detention basin for this site. There's very little impervious coverage, right? I mean, as a site, it's very little.
Well, what I think we would say is agree as a condition would be that we would consider that, and we could, again, I think really the last memo I'm about to speak to is the CME memo, which doesn't make that recommendation, but if there's a recommendation and a preferred alternative that we can successfully gain approval from other agencies, like, for example, the Delaware American Canal Commission.
Well, I think they would love it.
Right.
Because, I mean, a detention basin would reduce the runoff and pollutants, but, I mean, here you're doing it in a very natural way, and just letting it go into the ground. Mark, do you have any insight as to why the staff didn't prefer that solution?
Yeah, I really can't. I mean, I would have to defer to CME. I mean, it's clearly an engineering exercise.
okay, and not being an engineer and not staying at a Holiday Inn Express last night, I would defer to them, but I would say that personally, I would prefer the pavers, if possible.
We're going back.
Microphone.
We had gone back and forth in our discussions, and as it's pervious, impervious, so as Michael said, we'll do what the staff engineering recommends. It's what your preference is.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a perfect site for pervious pavement because it's not huge. And you really don't have, I mean, we get pushback from fire prevention, right? Because they say it can't handle, which I don't necessarily believe is true. But in this case, I mean, you're not going to have to handle too much. It's only 3 houses. It's not like it's a...
Well, actually, only 2 of the houses would use that driveway.
Yeah.
Right.
Even better.
Yeah. I would say that we have a fully engineered stormwater management plan now that's been reviewed and approved by Delaware Raritan Canal Commission. We'll explore that alternative, and if we can successfully, and to your point, provide a system that might be less expensive, less obtrusive, more aesthetically pleasing, and also satisfy those agencies like we already have with the current design, we would do that.
Okay, that sounds reasonable. I mean, it's not a hill to die on, but it's something to consider. I mean, the stormwater regulations dictate what your basin is going to be, and it's going to do the same thing, but in a less, natural way.
And actually that, before I go to CME's report of September 27th, we do have a review from Mr. House dated August 23rd, 2022 with 3 bullet points. Really, only 1 bullet point is, would like to discuss, and that is there was a recommendation to widen that driveway from 12 feet to 20 feet. That's pretty wide. The required driveway width for the flag lot ordinance in the town is 12 feet. I've met with Mr. House within the last 24 hours and discussed this item in detail. That is the width of the driveway. And I would say to the board that we would, as a condition of approval, address his concern with whatever width we end up with to his satisfaction. And he, understood the balancing act of other issues like additional impervious coverage versus wider driveway, and would perhaps accept a narrower driveway, not quite 20 feet, but maybe slightly greater than 12 feet.
Yeah, that was my concern.
Yeah, but, the good thing is, if you do it in pervious pavement, then, that's kind of meeting in the middle, right? He wants wider driveway for fire trucks, and you know why he's asking for it. But if it's pervious pavement, then less impact.
But less than the stormwater, correct, right. Yep.
He could be asking for more than just fire truck access. What if they have a party and people have to park in the driveway? How do you get past the cars that are there?
Right, understood.
Yeah.
Well, I was just thinking, supposing a car from House A is on its way out, and a car from House B is on its way in, and they meet, and that's a way to have bad neighbor relationships.
Right.
So I think we could get away with 18 feet, because I think there are township streets as narrow as 18 feet. I think the one I live on may be that narrow. But I really think it ought to be wide enough for 2 cars to pass each other.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Okay. The property that borders this has basically the exact same situation. You happen to know how wide their driveway is?
It looks like they actually widened it, and I don't know if that was, always that wide, or they widened it themselves. It looks like it's about 3 feet wider, which I think brought it to close to 18, or a little better than 18.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a couple quick questions about all the extra trees that you have to deal with, that your replacement trees. I believe the property borders in the rear Somerset Run, right?
Yes, the age-restricted community, right?
I think, would it be worth considering supplementing buffers at the rear and the side of the property? You have a wooded property, but a lot of it is not shielding very much at this time of the year. So I'm wondering if some of those trees, instead of putting money in a fund, could be used to supplement the two borders, especially next to the one neighbor on the right as you face the property, and the other one's Somerset Run in the back.
This neighbor at the top here, is that?
Yes.
So some supplemental plantings between the two existing houses?
Yes.
Okay.
The other thing I would like to see is a landscaped detention basin, so that it's not visible from the street, if possible.
That's if they need one. If they need one. They may not need one if they can do the pervious pavement, right?
Well,
Right, provide some screening. It's a long, narrow basin now, immediately next to the driveway. We would provide some screening between that and the
I like
Cedar
them
Grove
when you
Lane.
put plantings within the basin themselves. Now, as you know, I've been here for too many years, and I never can understand why some are okay to have plantings within them, and others, they say, oh, no, we absolutely can't do that. I think it's a lot more natural. This is a property that is heavily wooded, a detention basin that has landscaping and trees even within it would absolutely, if you have to have a detention basin, would absolutely fit in with the rest of the property and everything around it.
Okay?
If it's that narrow, there's probably not much room to plant things in it, but perhaps at least some shrubs, and then you could have some shielding at the street end. And I'd just like to make one more suggestion, compromise on the pervious pavement. If you had pervious pavement for the expanded areas in front of the houses where, say, people will park, and had regular pavement for the driveway itself, that would be a compromise that would allow a little more infiltration, but allow you to keep with your existing plan for the detention basin. But perhaps you can discuss with the DRCC whether they would prefer pervious pavement to the detention basin. I have no idea how they would feel, but.
Okay.
I just wanted to clarify, where we're going to supplement the trees in the basin or in the back by the residential, those will come from the deficiency or from that group that we were going to pay contribution. Yeah, that's my point.
Yeah, no, I think
Use
it's a
them
good
on
idea.
site, not a.
You don't want the money, we get the trees. That's,
Right.
right.
Yeah, I mean, if you could plant 88, you'd owe us nothing, so.
Well, we're up to 45, and Michael will design something.
Right.
And if you do conifers, don't do white pine because the bottom branches eventually die off and then they're not screening. You know, firs, arborvitae, although the deer will eat arborvitae,
They have
firs are
Norway
good.
spruce on the plan.
Or spruce. Spruce is fine.
Okay. Last review memorandum?
Yeah, he's going to go over the CME memorandum now.
Okay.
Only anything that you can't
And
comply with
only
or you
everything-
want to discuss with the
And
board.
really, it's, there are comments regarding the relief with regards to the variances. Mr. O'Brien will address that. And then, really, the only thing that I would discuss with the board is to the extent under, we just talked about some storm drainage items. Under item, paragraph D in the storm drainage, there's some requests for items regarding the county road. You know, the drainage analysis of the county road. This is on Cedar Grove Lane, under control of the county. And what I would just ask is that we, not have to necessarily serve two masters. To the extent we can address these comments by CME, but not cause an issue with the county, we would agree to do that. That's it.
Thank you.
Chairman, just two questions. Comment number 3 in my report about the sidewalk along the frontage.
Yes. That's, I would say, really a board decision, whether it's a county road. I don't think there's any sidewalks there now. Would the board prefer or like to have a sidewalk there?
From my point of view, I don't want to hear there aren't any there now. Put the sidewalks in.
Okay.
I know Charles would say that.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
And then the other question, or comment two, so there were, the house that you have on your plan differs in scale and dimension and design. Looks like the houses that are on the architectural plans are significantly bigger. Is that true? And also the driveway locations change, which could affect the amount of clearing.
Right.
So I guess at the end of the question at the end of the day is, how accurate is that limit of disturbance that you've shown on here in light of the architecturals that have been submitted?
Right. I think our response is that we'll make the two consistent. Either this plan will be consistent with, these are really illustrative, I'll say. You know, it's, might not be the exact house and the exact footprint that's there, but we'll make it consistent with both.
Okay, so at the
Well,
end of the
whatever you
day,
build should be accurately reflected in the plans. So if those plans don't reflect exactly what you build, then you should revise them.
Correct.
Right?
That's what we're saying.
Because I noticed in a related item that was mentioned that the grading, that shows you're going to preserve certain large trees on the site, the grading isn't consistent with you doing that. So that's probably related to the size of houses, perhaps.
Right.
So, I mean, yeah, and that would, of course, increase your tree contribution.
Right. Yeah, like the 88 might be greater if we end
Yeah.
up disturbing more. Correct.
So just make sure they're consistent.
Correct.
I just want to make sure, so the board understands, so, and I'm sure Mr. O'Brien's testimony is going to speak to the fact that doing this alternative as opposed to a road is going to reduce the amount of tree clearing, is going to reduce the amount of grading and stormwater runoff. And I'm sure he'll go into a lot more detail than I just stated. But he's going to rely upon, I'm sure, the amount of clearing that you're showing on that plan, which is relatively minimal. You're showing in light green, that's the area that's going to be disturbed, basically. That's where there's either going to be a house, a driveway, or a lawn, and that you're showing in that dark green, that's where the forest is going to remain, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so to what degree, with everything that's been discussed, will you agree to pretty much, or agree to that as being the limit of disturbance?
We're making the two consistent, so to the extent we need to modify that, the final accepted, signed-off plans will be consistent with the architectural plans, which will be consistent with whatever stormwater we end up with.
And then the plan
and the
submitted
rest.
for building permit will then have to also be consistent with those plans?
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Well, during resolution compliance, we'll make all the adjustments.
Wanted to make sure Mr. Ford
Oh, I
said it
got
on the
you.
record.
I just have a quick question. Do we really have a choice about, I want the driveway the way it's been discussed, all right, but do we really have a choice that they'll build a public street or provide the flag lot driveways like they're doing? I mean, if the town's not going to accept this as a public street if they come in and decide we want it as a public street, are they?
No, well, they are not proposing a street.
No, but they said that was the alternative.
No, so what they're, again, this is what I'm sure Mr. O'Brien's going to show, is normally they, this is actually a three-lot subdivision. And I think that the variances that they're seeking, they could design this subdivision with a small cul-de-sac roadway. And that roadway would be within a right-of-way. That right-of-way and the road conceivably would be dedicated to the township. There'd be a basin associated with that, and that would become township's responsibility, and it would result in more disturbance. They're proposing this as an alternative, and I'm sure Mr. O'Brien's going to attempt to justify the variances that they are overall a C2, the benefits outweigh the detriments, despite the fact that there are some variances.
Yeah, I don't want the road to become the responsibility of the township, but what I'm questioning is, can a developer just come in and decide that we're going to build this and give it to the town?
No, because there's nothing because that is not a road. You can only dedicate.
There's no right-of-way there.
There's no right-of-way, it's not built to township road standards, it would have to be, per the residential site improvement standards, certain width, certain manner of construction, it'd have to be a cul-de-sac of a certain width. This is not a road by any measure, it is a shared common driveway.
And it
serving these
wasn't
two
a
lots.
landlocked property to start with.
Yeah, and there's going to be an access easement that's between those two properties and allows those property owners to traverse each other's property to access their lots, but it's not of a width that would be ever appropriate for dedication to the township.
Okay, bottom line is, we really didn't have and didn't want a choice. It's going to be their flag lot driveway.
Well, yeah, I mean, just to be, technically, you do have a choice. I mean, you could decide you'd rather see a cul-de-sac road. You could. But that is, again, their job to, they're basically proposing that this is a better
But
alternative.
whose job is it to sell it to the town
Well, there's nothing to sell to the
if it
town.
were decided to be a cul-de-sac?
Well, if they build, I mean, you're asking me a question about what they're not doing. If they had decided to do a cul-de-sac road, I don't know exactly what the question is. I mean, if
Who
they built-
accepts it on behalf of the
The township
town?
Yeah, but we're
council.
not doing that. So we-
township council.
It's just a.
In the future,
homeowners will maintain that,
Yeah,
correct?
when roads are dedicated to the township, my understanding is it's done by ordinance, and the township council has to accept the
Yeah,
dedication.
no, this is not a road that council would
Well,
ever.
if I may, just to supplement what Mark's saying to help. Mr. Thomas, there is no road there, so there's nothing to dedicate or accept. If in fact we had come in, as Mr. O'Brien will say, and wanted to improve a public right-of-way and pave it and use it to make the lots conforming, we just don't, you can't give a road to the town.
Okay,
The town has to.
let's not waste any more
No,
time.
they have
I
to accept
understand
it.
that.
Okay.
I don't understand, what I didn't understand is why that was used as part of the presentation,
Right.
as offering a choice, basically, and it's not.
Well, it's just a better alternative.
Better offers what you got.
Okay.
Okay.
We think so.
I think we've come to an agreement, so.
Now, Mr. O'Brien
I
can put
think
the icing on
Mr.
it.
Clarkin had a question?
I do have a question. Anyone on your team can answer it. How are the flag lot owners going to handle repair and maintenance of the common driveway, snow removal, insurance, those items?
We will prepare there will be a condition of the approval, there would be a common driveway maintenance agreement which would cover repair, repaving, insurance. It will not be an association, but since they will both benefit, it will be a restriction running with the land, file deed restriction, if you will.
Recorded easement.
Yeah, will also be in the deeds, but it'll be a recorded easement, whatever it is.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
I mean,
Okay.
you and I agree, that's what's going to happen. And if someone doesn't contribute, then the other homeowner has the right to,
You'll have to put the appropriate language in there.
yeah.
But
Okay.
just to clarify, because the reason why this is the main variance is that the ordinance, your typical flag lot, you have the lot in the front, and then you have the flag lot in the back. This one, they have that existing one in the front, they have the one in the back, and then they have a third. Technically, our flag lot ordinance does not permit that, and again, then it goes to the whole alternative situation we just spoke about.
So I think Mr. O'Brien will probably cover that.
Yeah, before we do so, what do we have on Emwell Road, the new flag lot that came in by Gary Court, next to the school, the middle school?
They
Was that
started the improvements.
Is that a
and-
driveway or a road?
Is this the one where they started the improvements
they
and
just
just have it
started.
cleared? It's almost an identical situation, but it's just two lots.
Is it a public road or a
No.
driveway? It's not? Okay,
Correct.
Great.
Right.
All right.
There is an example of a public road just down Cedar Grove Lane. If you look at the map that comes with the architectural plans, Brenner Court, but that serves 7 houses, so there's much more reason for it to be a township street.
Great.
Mr.
I
O'Brien?
think we've had 1 or 2 cases like this before.
Mr. O'Brien, if you'll grab the microphone stand and raise your right hand for Mr. Clarkin.
solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, Mr. O'Brien.
I do.
Name and address, please.
Kevin O'Brien, Shamrock Enterprises, Madison House, Madison Avenue in Rahway, New Jersey.
And what is your license at the present time, sir?
I am a licensed professional planner. I am licensed by the state of New Jersey, and my license is current and in good standing.
And you appeared before this board on
Many, many times. He's
many
accepted.
times. I
Thank
ask
you,
that he
Mr.
be deemed an expert in professional planning. Hearing none, I think you have been. All right, Mr. O'Brien, you've reviewed the staff report, you reviewed the plans prepared by Mr. Ford. Please give us your opinion as to why the requested variances should be granted.
My opinion is that Mr. Healy has covered my testimony. Dr. Chase has augmented it, and I'm pretty much done here tonight. But I will go a little
That's
further.
probably not good enough for Jim.
I'm just looking at this map, that it's actually with the tree replacement calculations. We have exactly this situation on the other side of Cedar Grove Lane. Lots 3.01, 3.02, and 3.03. There's one flag lot behind another, so we have approved them.
In fact, on our side of Cedar Grove, there are flag lots to our north and east a little bit, 1203, 1204, 1205, 1206, and they are entered by a driveway-like entry. To our southwest are lots 16 and 17, also flag lots, also entered by a driveway-like entry. As Dr. Chase has pointed out, Brenner Court, further to the south and west, is an example of a public road. It's a cul-de-sac. As the doctors pointed out, there are 7 homes on that. It's definitely the comparison that, if you're looking for one, exists between a driveway-like entry, which is what we're proposing here, and a public road. And this speaks to what has been mentioned before as to the alternatives before the board. Basically, the heart of the matter tonight is that minor subdivision, we've got to get, because now we're making 3 lots where there was 1. But number 2, we want to put 2 flag lots instead of 1. That's the essence of what we're doing tonight. All the 3 lots are going to be conforming. The only exception to that is the front yard setback on the front lot, which faces Cedar Grove, and we're off by 3 inches there. Other than that, I would call that de minimis, if Mr. Clark would accept that language.
I would.
Thank you. Other than that, everything is conforming. Mr. Healy has pointed out in his report that we are conforming in every way. The engineer, Mr. Ford, has just pointed out that we will meet the various conditions that have been imposed. So going back to why is the 2 flag lots proposed in this 3-lot subdivision a better planning alternative? Because the alternative is a cul-de-sac, much like at Brenner, which would be improved to township standards, which would be wider. It would be a road. It would not be a driveway. It would be a lot more noticeable from the roadway. It would certainly stand out more than the driveway would. In addition to that, the major points of less open space, more less impervious cover, more stormwater, all jump into that equation. So in front of you is, can you allow the 2 flag lots to exist that are fully conforming in every way to the ordinance? Or the owner goes back to the drawing board and says, I can put in a fully conforming cul-de-sac with 3 lots of land. That's the essence of where we are tonight. I could point out to you that the master plan does talk about a goal of maintain the diversity of housing, but encourage infill and stabilization of current residential areas rather than continuing sprawl patterns of development. I would point out that the municipal land use law does talk about item A, to encourage municipal action to guide the appropriate use or development of all lands in this state in a manner which will promote the general welfare. G, provide sufficient space in appropriate locations for a variety of uses, including residential. I, promote a desirable visual environment. And M, to encourage coordination of the various public and private procedures and activities shaping land development and to the more efficient use of the land. And I think I would conclude that you have an application in front of you. If that application is denied, the applicant can go back and propose to the town a fully conforming cul-de-sac subdivision. I believe that the alternative that's in front of you meets the flexible C2 standard, and that the benefits far outweigh the detriments. Much less land will be used. There will be more open space, more trees, less impervious cover, less scars upon the land, and certainly one that is more conforming to this area, and that a driveway will be the entry to this development, much like the others in the neighborhood. The proposed improvements are hundreds of feet from nearby houses, and I would conclude that this application can be granted without substantial detriment to the public good and without substantial impairment of the zone plan and the zoning ordinance. I welcome any questions.
Sure did.
Oh, I just have one. Assuming you can make the proposed buffer, Mark's opinion was that you need a variance for that. Assuming you can make it as he describes, then I assume you wouldn't need a variance for that.
Correct, and Mr. Ford has indicated that they could. Buffer.
On page 4, the last one, that references 11272D7.
Well, let me address that if I could. I think, so the portion that technically needs the variance is, as the bright green circles on the bottom are representing the proposed evergreen plantings. The ordinance would require that would extend the full length of the buildable portion of the lot, so that rear house, it really should extend that full, in front of that house. What they're showing, though, instead is it stops before it gets there, and then they're showing in that dark green the preservation of existing trees. So I guess my question then, if I could put in form of a question, Mr. O'Brien, would you feel that the grant of that variance could be justified as a C2? Because in order to fully comply with the ordinance, you would have to take down existing trees to put in new, smaller trees.
That is correct, Mr. Healy. I do think that Mr. Ford and associates could take a look and see if there could be any augmentation, field reviewed, and see if there is room for anything, depending upon the age, the growth of the existing trees, their location, vis-a-vis the lot line. I think that could certainly be a condition to field check the locations and see if there's any opportunity. But if there is not, and there's sufficient buffer already, with the dark green being mature, grown, existing trees, that should be adequate.
Thank you. Does that address your comment, Mr. Chair?
It does. I mean, I don't want to have to see them come back for, such a silly, best word I can come up with, variance, because why would you take down mature trees to
Thank you,
a
Chair.
row of pines? Anybody else have any questions for Mr. O'Brien?
Just one.
Go ahead.
Kevin, I know you stated your ultimate conclusion, the benefits far outweigh the detriment. Do you see any detriments at all that the board would weigh in deciding whether to share your conclusion?
I don't.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board for either Mr. Ford or Mr. O'Brien? If not, we will open to the
Just
public.
have a basic question about, as we get more flag lots potentially, and I don't know if this has anything to do with the testimony, just for my own edification, do we monitor resident complaints or homeowner complaints as it relates to flag lots? Have we seen any cases where you're starting to have tension between neighbors as a result of this, or issues with the sale of these properties due to the granting of this through the process?
Well, Mr.
I'm just
Brown,
curious.
if I would suggest, and I don't mind, I didn't mean to interrupt, but whoever's going to buy it, will have to put on notice, and Mr. Clarkin can address that in the resolution, that as we advertise for the construction of the homes, we will have to advise the prospective purchaser, who will get it anyway when they do a title search, that there is a shared driveway, there is a maintenance agreement, and once they do that, Mr. Brown, if they have a problem, they got to work it out.
Yeah, except that they're our neighbors, and we would have to hear, I just want to know if
Yeah,
it has no bearing on anything. I just want to know.
No,
No, we don't get too many complaints. I can think of one situation where they do share a driveway, but the complaints are more Hatfield-McCoy, and not necessarily related to the driveway. They just don't get along and they complain about everything about each
Right.
other. But one thing I did notice is that this is the second application, the other one being the one you had asked about. That was an application before this board a few years ago. And I think the question about the width of the driveway and, was a concern with that application as well. So we might want to look at the ordinance. I think the rest of the ordinance generally makes sense, but that seems to be the one issue that keeps popping up.
Right.
So it might be something that you might want to look at and see if maybe the standard needs to be adjusted.
Thanks, and that was the point of the question. I want to make sure as these come up before us, we're not overlooking something.
And I think a lot of the times these ordinances are written to be more conservative. I mean, we'd rather grant the exceptions by variance and rather than just say 2 or 3 is fine. But Mark, I think, Charles, you raised a good point. If it's common now to do at least 2 flags or 3 or whatever, and you're always coming for variances, then maybe it's something we should look at.
Well, I think flag lots, it depends. A request to go for 2 flag lots depends on the width of the property. Just as the Brenner Court was an even wider property, so they could have house lots that were narrower but deeper, running sideways from the court. It depends on the size of the property, whether you have 1 flag lot or 2.
Anybody have anything else? If not, make a motion to open to the public.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is now open to the public for any comments on this application.
Shirley Tallman, 57 Tallman Lane. And I really came here tonight to learn. And the reason I want to learn is because eventually I would like to build a small development, very small, actually a commune, 5 small houses. So I'm here to learn. And I heard a lot of things here tonight, and for the sake of take the risk of, not understanding some of it, I wanted to ask about the trees, because I'm big on trees. Are you taking a lot of trees out?
Okay. Yeah, the township has an ordinance that we've complied with where you use a calculation based on the number of the trees and even a weighted scale as to the size of the trees you're taking down in order to determine the tree replacement requirements. And it's only for smaller trees where it's a 1-to-1 replacement. As you increase in size, for example, a larger tree, the mitigation requirement is greater than 1-to-1, perhaps 3-to-1, 4-to-1, and we've complied with that.
Are you required to stay under a certain percentage of trees that can be removed? Percentage?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I mean, I wrote the ordinance, so I can say that it was what was legally defensible and modeled after other townships' tree ordinances and provided a sliding scale that was justifiable. A 2-inch sapling does not carry the value of a 50-inch diameter beech tree or something like that. So it was defensible in that regard, and it was, the replacement cost was not so onerous that most developers would, just say, I'm going to charge you $100,000 for every tree you take out. Well, they're going to go to court. If you charge them what we charge them, I think, which is $30, which when I was chair of the Shade Tree Commission, you could actually buy a bare root tree that was pretty decent size, 8 to 10 feet tall, and that's what we sold for Arbor Day to the public, and we used the profits
Is this
such
on
as-
my
such
time
as
or
they were.
yours, or do I have?
Oh, no, you can, I'm just
Oh,
answering
okay.
your question,
I just want to check,
Shirley.
because you know how that
Yeah,
goes
no, I'm just
sometimes.
answering your question. I haven't put you on
Okay,
any
thank
time
you.
limit.
Thank you.
But just, since you're here to learn,
Yeah.
I'm telling you what you're asking, which
Mm-hmm.
is essentially the ordinance was written and reviewed legally to be compliant and not onerous, and nothing that would cause anybody to sue or, push back, and yet it was a way to get, and the ordinance also stipulates you have to use the money for planting trees or caring for trees in the township. So that means if equipment to prune, or actually replacing trees, or buying trees, or whatever.
Okay, so just to review what you've said here, there's a percentage in the ordinance.
There's a methodology to determine the number of trees that they need to replace. So as Mr. Ford said, it's very complicated, but it's for trees that are in the range of 4 to 16 inches in size, it's basically a 1-for-1. And then when they get bigger, if you remove one tree that's 20 inches, you might have to replace that one tree with 20 new trees.
And that makes a lot of
And it's a
sense,
sliding
doesn't it?
scale.
Yeah. Now, what about the cost of those trees? Who actually puts the money out of their pocket for the trees? Is the township paid?
Yeah, the township, if there's a shortfall, our ordinance allows them to do a payment in lieu.
Yeah, there's
And
actually.
did I hear $30?
Yeah.
It's been increased.
Yeah, I hope so, because I bought a tree.
This was
Yeah,
good
I
15
bought a
years
tree
ago.
not long ago. I couldn't get a fraction of it for $30.
Well, that's because you're buying a much larger tree that's probably ball and burlapped, you're paying for installation. What we figured was, if we as a shade tree commission to go out and buy a pretty decent-sized tree for $30, if you go to a landscaper and pay $500 for something that's, a pretty decent diameter, well, if you're patient, these things grow. And, I've gotten stuff in my yard that's
Okay.
was
Okay.
like a twig, and now it's 40 feet high.
Okay, I still would make the statement that $30 is absurd.
Well, it has, like Mark said, it's been increased.
And what is it, Mark?
Well, we just had a new estimate, Mike, and it's $300 now.
Oh, wow.
Now,
Wow.
that does sound more
Inflation.
like it, doesn't
Yeah,
it,
it
Chairman?
does. It
Owens?
does.
Now we're talking.
Well, at the time, Shirley, I'll tell you a little story, and again, not on your time, but at the time, council was very hard to persuade to actually do a tree ordinance at all. So I figured we'll start small and we can build. And I was able to get what was through.
Okay.
And there were some people on council at the time very pro-development.
And what year would that have been?
Oh, gosh. Probably 2005, 6, something like that. I don't know what the date of the ordinance is, but.
It was before my time, because the
Well,
ordinance was in
I
place when
started chairing the shade, it was the first assignment I had when I moved into town in '99. The first thing that I was put on was Shade Tree Commission, because, they all got up and resigned.
Those-
Remember that?
2 decades ago.
Yeah.
or so.
So I said, I can, John Clyde was mayor, I said, I can do this. I know what council wants. They didn't want an activist shade tree commission. They wanted somebody to go out there and plant trees and not make it overly complicated. There was a guy in charge of it that was kind of
Okay.
militant.
Well, I appreciate the
He's
explanation.
now bothering Hillsborough or Montgomery, I think.
Okay. I guess, yeah. I just wanted to say that I hope that if I do decide to purchase land under your jurisdiction, and I come before you, that I feel as comfortable as these gentlemen do tonight, speaking with you, and that you will be as considerate to my needs as well. Just put that little plug in. But for some reason, 25%, I'm thinking 25% of the trees at one point, wasn't that in an ordinance? No more than 25% should be removed, or am I wrong on that?
I don't recall that.
Dr. Chase, help me on that.
Oh, well, I have to admit, the Environmental Commission has been discussing the situation. We first made the recommendation that the amount per tree be increased to match what it would cost the township to plant a new tree, and without counting for the township labor, the size tree that is specified in the ordinance would now cost about $300. But there was a provision in the ordinance saying that not more than 25% of the number of trees that would be required to be planted, not more than 25% could be defrayed by making a contribution to the shade tree fund. At some point in the last decade or so, that requirement was taken out. The Environmental Commission is about to propose that that requirement be put back in. I suspect that, well, we don't know what council will do. Obviously, I think this case is at one end of the spectrum because we have an almost entirely wooded property, and they are proposing to take down pretty much only as many trees as absolutely necessary to build the houses and the driveway. At the other end of the scale, you could have a proposal for a warehouse. If they were coming in on a fully wooded piece of property, they'd be proposing to take down at least 70% of the trees and perhaps more on the property in order to put in a warehouse of the size permitted by the ordinance. So we'll see what happens. But all I can say is that I wasn't going to say anything until Mark said that, yes, the cost, which is, the ordinance simply says the cost to be determined by the township engineer. So no new ordinance was required, or amendment of ordinance was required there. It could simply be changed by the township engineer, which is now CME. Any further changes, though, will require a change in the ordinance. And in fact, the Environmental Commission and Shade Tree Commission have formed a subcommittee to revise this ordinance.
Thanks, Ted.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay, seeing no one else from the public, or no other public, actually, I move to close.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Do you have any summation that you'd like to make?
Well, I had a 30-page summation ready, but knowing this board
Denied.
as I do,
We don't believe you.
I don't give summations. Thank you very
Well,
much.
Peter does, I give him a little. He seems to like it, so
Thank you very much.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, we'll entertain a motion.
Width of the driveway.
Yeah,
Did we nail it down?
yeah, I think we,
18? We're at 18? Okay.
Yeah.
well, I'm just saying we need a motion. I didn't say that I would do it, but
I'll make the move. I will move approval of the application, and one of the conditions is that we have an 18-foot driveway. I would suggest, this may be going too far, that the alternative of a pervious pavement driveway be presented to the Delaware and Raritan Canal Commission. I'm not suggesting that we necessarily push that, but
well, let's just say whatever agency, because I see a meeting
Yeah,
review,
or any
right?
other
Just-
agency.
You'll discuss it with the appropriate agencies or departments to,
Well, Michael may hit me or not, because we had discussed a pull-off, that not the entire driveway to be 18, but a portion of it, which would allow, for Dr. Chase's concern, if there is a busy traffic for a New Year's party or something, and two cars were coming in opposite directions, one could pull over. I don't know, Michael, if you're,
Yeah, we were opposed to that because you saw the other flag lot, they had extended the width of the driveway, signaling that the prior one wasn't wide enough.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's why we came up with the
Yeah.
18-foot compromise. I think unless you have some kind of
I think
massive
18
vehicle
feet
that,
also allows what Mr. Brown mentioned before, since these are new neighbors, and I see the one next to it and the one across the street you're talking about, the one issue that comes up is when there's a holiday or a party or something, 18 feet gives someone a chance to pull on the side of the driveway and park, and people can go back and forth. Maybe you can't have one going each direction at the same time, but that, I think, is better than a pullover.
so 18 feet it is, because we're making a motion, not having a
I
discussion.
think it should be 18 feet.
Okay, 18 it is.
Yeah,
Anything
Mr.
else?
House asked for 20.
No, you don't have to, we were convinced. Is there anything else?
I would just say that the conditions would be complying with the requirements of the outside agencies with jurisdiction, the staff reports from Franklin Township, except as explicitly not indicated in this proceeding. Revised plans as needed. Consider the pervious pavement if permitted by outside agencies and recommended by our outside engineer. Attempt to plant more trees on site. The sidewalk is to be constructed, limit of disturbance to be shown on revised plans, and recorded easement satisfactory and form to the staff and the board attorney.
And to what Jim said about consistent, that means like the grading, the size of the houses, so that if the grading is less, then you're not removing more trees, because we noted that inconsistency.
Is the
does a pretty good-
maintenance of it included in that, like snow removal?
Yeah,
Okay.
yes.
Great.
And obviously, the two variances, one for the flag lots themselves and one for the non-extended buffer.
Did we include the balance of the trees to be used as the buffer?
We'll put it in that we encourage them to enhance that buffer rather than, to the extent possible, and make a smaller donation to the tree fund. If
Second.
possible.
Okay, so who first it, since Ted
moved
started it and it went down the
Ted
line?
moved it, Charles seconded it.
All right.
Yeah.
Mahir Rafik,
Yes.
Ted Chase,
Yes.
Jennifer Ragno,
Yes.
Charles Brown,
Yes.
Robert Thomas,
Yes.
and Chairman Orsini.
Yes.
Very much.
Have a great night. Mark, I assume this probably would have just been a TRC if it didn't contain variances, correct?
Well,
Thank you.
no, because if they hadn't done it this way, they would have done it with a road, and that would have made it a major.
Oh, okay. All right. So it had to come to us no matter
Yeah,
what.
it's a minor subdivision without variances and without, infrastructure goes to the committee.
Do we have another meeting this year or not?
We do on the 21st.
First, what a Grinch.
Wait a minute.
Move to adjourn?
Yeah, move to adjourn on the 21st, too. I'll be on vacation, so, not on vacation from work.